Greetings! Welcome to the Week 19 Early Access Update for Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades. We're going to start off, as always, with a quick sound check. Make sure your speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful! So what have we got for you this week? Well, we've got some new toys and a new environment, as well as some enhancements for our existing attachment system. So let's start out with the new toys. We've got, to start with here, what many might call the quintessential scary-looking black gun, in that this is the Tech 9, actually federally banned by name in the United States for, well, from everything I've been able to tell from researching it, because it looks scary. This thing in real life, from the consensus, I've never actually fired it, I'm just going off of what I've seen in videos, is that this sucker is actually a bit of a piece of junk in real life. Not very well made, but it definitely looks fearsome, and I actually came into this, because I had really seen this gun in Counter-Strike and in Archer. I was expecting this to actually be an SMG, but it's not. It's just a blowback 9mm handgun. Let's give her a few shots. Kick's a good deal because it's, long in the front. But I saw this online a little while back and contacted the artist and basically was like, "Can I please license this from you? It just, especially with this paint job, it just looks so cool." So I decided I just had to have it. So yeah, so that's the Tech 9. And then we've got this sucker, which I had been hoping to have ready for last week when I was doing the Russian guns, but didn't get this quite finished. This is the PP91. I imagine a number of you might have never heard of this. I don't think I've ever seen it in a video game, although I do know it's in a few. And this is basically just a sort of more compact, sort of machine pistol style SMG. It's select fire, so we've got semi and full. Got the bolt handle here. It's a little tight. You may notice when you go to when you go to rack this, your controllers might knock into each other, so be careful. I might expand that interaction zone so it's less likely to happen. So here it is on semi. And on full, she's got a really high cyclic rate. And we're out. So yes, that's the PP91. So moving right along, what do we have? I mentioned some changes and enhancements. So the first thing I want to show off is that for handguns, you'll remember either last week or the week before, I made it so that when you have a handgun in your hand and your other hand is empty, it basically lowers the recoil when you're firing. I've added one other thing, which is that when you're in that exact same context, the handguns will rotationally filter the sort of controller position when you're stabilizing them that way. So let's see if I can hopefully this will come across well enough in video. In fact, we can do it just right here. If I'm just holding this individually with one hand, you'll notice that it has a little bit of micro twitch because, my hand's shaky. But when I put my other hand near the gun, it's significantly more stable from a rotational standpoint. So this should definitely help those of you who are, shooting braced like this. The next change is, and this is something that has affected all Holo and RedDot sights, is that we have a significantly clearer dot. Let me actually turn off laser sights. Yeah, so that's just, you'll notice in the in the prior updates, when you would push a handgun out with a straight arm, the red dot would sort of disappear. It would get too small. So I've made a number of changes to mipmaps and just the size of the quad being drawn. So it looks great when it's up close and it's nice and small, and still looks great when it's out at arm's length. Wonderful. Let's actually go ahead and grab this just you can see this, the way this affects things as well. We'll get our tall doctor sight here and our 3x magnifier. As you can see, dot's nice and clear when we're just looking down it. Dot's nice and clear and not too oversized when we're looking through a magnifier. So yeah, so hopefully that should be better for you folks to aim with. The Holosights also got some cleanup. I made the reticle a bit smaller as I looked at some more video of these types of Holosights and realized that my sort of sight picture for it was way too large. So that should be about what the size should be. And with a magnifier, beautiful. Much easier to aim with. So, now that we've covered that, we're going to go ahead and jump over to our brand new scene for the week. So, we are over in our new scene. This is still very work in progress. Only can get so much done in a week. But this is the long-requested sniper range. For those of you who've been wanting to test just how good your aim is at pretty extreme ranges, we have this scene for you now. So, to go with it, I'm going to go ahead and grab my Dragonuv here. Go ahead and spawn lock that mag. We have a new optic as well. You'll note that the prior scope that was added with the Sako is a 3 to 12x magnification. This new one goes all the way from 1 to 24. So this is how to put this. I don't know if 24x on this sort of size of lens even works super well at the panel resolution of our current headsets. In a major way, this scene is designed to find the upper bound of sort of magnifications that work and sort of what range you can still accurately see things at various magnifications. So I'm really looking for feedback from you folk. Now, one thing you'll sort of immediately notice is that unless you've got one of those sort of, sort of Vive controller cradles that some of you folks have been making and playing with, shooting beyond about a 12x magnification in a sort of freestanding pose is incredibly, incredibly difficult. And so what I've done is, you can't see it here, but I've got two large pillows in front of me on the floor that I've taken off my couch, and I am now going to trundle down into a prone position to try to get some more stability out of this. I'm also going to go ahead, let's start this sucker at 12x. So we're going to drop that. We're going to come on down here. This is always a little more cumbersome when you're a fat ass like me. Going to go ahead and grab our rifle. Excuse me for a moment while I get my pillows that I have here in a good position. The ideal sort of setup is, you'll notice my sort of forearm is out here to be able to grab the foregrip, and it's completely rested on a set of pillows. I'm not having to keep my hand up. In many ways, you can even sort of like grab the foregrip of the rifle and just straight up drop the Vive controller on a pillow, almost like it's functioning like your bipod, and just worry about your back controller, which you can stabilize with both hands. So cool, we're on semi, our bolts racked. This scope is zeroed at 100 meters. I eventually want to make it so that you can do the sort of micro adjustments up on the top to change that. So we've got some watermelons to shoot at, we've got some dueling trees, and we got some bottles up on boxes. So the dueling tree targets are tiny, so they're actually quite hard to hit. Let's see if we can get one. Oh. Am I shooting low or high? There we go, I was shooting low. Still got to work on this scope reticle. It might just be because I'm firing from an elevated position. Wonderful. Let's see if we can get a water melt. Oh, out of ammo. That's the one problem of leaving your controller on the pillow in front of you, is you go to reach for it when you're in the mode that I'm in. Let's go ahead and dump out some more mags. Make this a bit easier for ourselves. You'll notice this bolt holds open correctly now. Let's try to push this out even further. Let's go 24x. See how far out we can get ourselves a shot. Ooh, 24x is so sensitive. I must be shooting low. Boom! That's at 250 roughly. Let's see if we can get the one at 3. Boom! Let's go even further. Oh. Oh, and we're out of ammunition. So yeah, so that's the sniper range for now. I eventually intend to add a number of more things in here. I'd like to make a target that has a sort of representation of itself up on a screen here. So if you're sort of learning how to shoot at various sorts of ranges, you'll be able to see exactly how high and low that you're hitting. I'll probably also represent it on the target downrange. And then longer term, I'd like to get some more sort of dynamic setups going in here so that you'll have a control panel where you can sort of set up. I'd like to be shooting at sort of targets in partial cover at 150 meters, or targets in no cover at 300, or however you want it to be set up. So yeah, and I'll probably be rolling out those modifications to this range over the course of the next couple weeks. So yeah, and also if you happen to be wondering over here in the corner, what are these weird little box things? One of the things that I worked on this week that I didn't make a ton of progress with has been being able to have firearms that have more than 2 grips on them. So say if it had a handle on the top, you'd be able to grab and hold it by that. If we take a look at these, oops, what happened? These might be glitching out on me. I might not be able to show these today. Ah, there we go. So the way these technical difficulties aside. So basically what these are experiments with various sorts of compound aiming when you're grabbing certain grips. You'll notice, in fact, it'll be way easier to show these if I actually let my, let's see, is that under controls or is that under guns? There we go. Just so we can keep the Vive controller visible here. These are experiments basically with having different grips control various things. So in the case of this, if I sort of pull this back, you'll notice that the back grip is controlling the position of the gun, and the forward grip is determining its orientation. This works perfectly fine for the rifles and SMGs that we've been playing with, but if we say want to be firing a scoped rifle off an actual bipod, we want the rifle to actually stay where the bipod is and have the back grip be used for aiming. And so here's another version of the same thing, except you'll notice that the foregrip controls where the gun is and the back grip determines the aiming. The foregrip is also determining its sort of roll to the side here. So these are all in preparation for handling the sort of 2 classes of weapons that aren't present yet in the game, but that I really want to get working well, which is anything that you would mount on a bipod and anything that might have sort of an unusual combination of grips. So there are certain machine guns that have a sort of grip out to the side, and RPG-7's grips aren't perfectly aligned with each other, and the current system just is not robust enough to support some of those permutations. Even a bullpup rifle, where you might want to, say, have you have your sort of handle here, and you might have a foregrip here, or if it's on a bipod, you might have a grip back here for helping to aim it. I'd like to be able to support those permutations, and so I actually spent a lot of this week working on this system, despite how silly and simple these look, but didn't make quite enough progress with it to be able to actually implement it into a real gun yet. So that's going to be a longer term project. It's a lot of dealing with quaternions, and if you don't know how hellish those are, I would recommend you look them up. So yeah, so let's go ahead and jump out of VR here.
Yo! Well, now that we're done shooting in the sniper range, I thought I would just jump out real quick, talk about a couple other little extant bugs that were fixed this week. Before that, though, if you're wondering what my sort of like prone firing pillow position looked like, it was just this basically. The forward pillow is sort of where your arm and extension is rested on, or where I'm just dropping the controller on and sort of firing the sort of base of the Dragonuv back here, nice and stabilized. And it works surprisingly well and is actually pretty comfortable. I definitely recommend you go ahead and duplicate your magazines before you do it, as you can't really get at your quick belt slots except for the ones that are next to your head. So yeah, let's see here. Just a couple little other things that were fixed this week. The magazine cleanup in the arena was breaking the Beretta 590A1 shotgun. So that's been fixed now. The MP5 and the MP5K now actually have a magazine release button on the main controller as well. I was under the mistaken impression that using the forward latch was the only way to release a magazine, but apparently there's also a little button you can hit with your index finger. So with the MP5 and the MP5K, you can use either pattern. So yeah, as I mentioned before, the Dragonuv now holds open properly on its last shot. There was a funny bug happening with the sort of disappearing controller setting when you're in an interaction, where if you let a grenade explode in your hand, the Geo wouldn't turn back on, which I think is sort of poetic considering that it would literally be blowing your hand off, but that's been fixed as a bug. So yeah. Oh, and the two-hand stabilization of handguns that I was showing off, both the filtering and the recoil dampening, now both respect the always use two-hand recoil option that is there for accessibility and for those of you who are sort of using a custom sort of Vive gun rig for your controllers. So yeah, beyond that, there's not going to be an update next week. I want to do something a little bit bigger for the 20th of our updates, and frankly put, after doing another like 5 of these or 6 of these straight since taking a break, I really need to take another break. I burned myself out this week fighting with math for trying to get... I wanted to actually have a functional bipod for the Dragonuv this week, and I tried as hard as I could, and I had one day where I must have fought with that system for 11 hours straight. Just there was something I was not getting about the rotation delta math, and nothing I was doing was working. So I'm a little fried. So, and I'd like to come into actually doing the 20th update sort of fresh and energized and have a bunch of fun stuff instead of just like sliding into home base exhausted. So yeah. Also, Deus Ex Mankind Divided is coming out on Tuesday, so I'm gonna be busy for like 2-3 days playing that. So hopefully you don't begrudge me too much for it. So, but until then, please, try out the sniper range. Do it with the Dragonuv and the bolt action, especially. I definitely recommend, while you're sort of figuring out and sort of feeling out just how much bullet drop affects things at that range, past about 200 meters, the bullet drop is, in the ballistics models, pretty significant in terms of, especially with those target sizes. I recommend turning on bullet trails, just so that, especially sort of firing, like pulling your head to the side and sort of playing around with just how that trajectory works with, because it's going to be different for each caliber round, just so that you get a feel for it. And then the last thing, I'd love some feedback on this, because this is the process of fixing the scopes and doing a range that's actually this long has drilled home for me just how hard it is to make a scope work correctly, in that even if you're sort of zeroing for a consistent range, right now it's zeroing, I have it zeroed for 100 meters, but not taking into account bullet drop, because that's something that necessarily is going to be different weapon to weapon, cartridge to cartridge, actually. Like, that's, you have to sort of compute or trial and error tune that in real life, sort of where that scope should be pointing. And so the big design question for me is whether I should be trying to do that arithmetically based upon the scope, looking at the gun and looking at the cartridge and using the velocity of the cartridge and computing that for you, and having you just be like, I want it zeroed at 100 meters based on this weapon, based on this cartridge. Or if some of you would actually enjoy very finely tuning the elevation and left to right alignment of the scopes to eventually account for things like windage. I don't have a notion exactly what percentage of you are into that amount of simulatory futzing, and whether or not you actually, because the only thing really convenient to do would be to save one set of settings for that at a time. So is it the sort of thing that you guys would actually like to have to re-zero a scope every time you switched it to a new rifle? Or do you just want it sort of autopilot and be like, I want to pick my range and I want the reticle to actually be pointing roughly where I expect it to be? I'd really like to know. So yeah. Well, either way, have yourselves fun with the new environment, the new toys this week, and especially if you're just like crushing it with the bolt action at maximum range, I would love to see some videos of that. Especially if you have a powerful enough rig to run the game super with the sort of changing your Vive configuration settings for super sampling. I would love to know how much that makes it easier or makes the scope picture clearer, as I haven't tested that myself. So yeah, well, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Peace.